like mine, treating us as collateral damage to corporate profiteering. Since the Paris Agreement and the summer of racial reckoning in the United States, we've seen financial institutions committing to net zero emissions, anti-racist policies, and stated commitments to indigenous rights and promoted investments in communities of color. At the same time, we see Wall Street's hypocrisy. Bank financing for the top LNG companies has increased from 15.2 billion in 2021 to 22.7 billion in 2022. Insurers are fleeing Louisiana after hurricanes while continuing to insure climate polluting facilities like LNG companies. And private equity investing climate committed pension funds into climate polluting LNG terminals. Despite this, there are meaningful indicators of momentum. Societe Generale pulled out of Rio Grande LNG when pressured by local communities. After a sustained campaign, Chubb announced it will only insure oil and gas projects if they cut methane emissions. And additional European banks have indicated vulnerabilities related to climate and indigenous rights. That's why the Gulf South Fossil Finance Hub that I work for as the coordinator, we believe that if we build upon the growing pressure and adequately expose financial institutions' environmental, social governance, or ESG, and anti racist hypocrisies, then we can build enough reputational risk for them to stop financing fossil fuel export terminals in the Gulf South. We are calling for Citibank to commit to end funding and financing services for new and expanding liquefied methane gas projects and their parent companies, including all projects that have already been built and those that have not been built or those that have not reached a final investment decision. This is a critical time for Citi to assess climate, community, and human rights impacts of the methane gas sector. We believe this move will reflect the significant change in U.S. policy towards liquefied natural gas or liquefied methane gas or liquefied fossil gas, whichever you want to call it. It's all horrible for our communities, our people, and our planet. We are here to say that enough is enough. With that said, I will now introduce you to the first panel. Many of them don't need an introduction, as I've stated before. You all know Ms. Sharon Levine, who is the founder and director of Rise St. James in Louisiana. Rise St. James is a faith-based grassroots nonprofit organization fighting for clean air and water and the eradication of petrochemical industries in St. James Parish. She is a 2021 Goldman Environmental Prize winner and a native of St. James, Louisiana. Beside her, we have Ariel Daughtery. Okay, I had to make sure I was saying her name correctly. She is a mother, marketing consultant, and community organizer with Texas Campaign for the Environment in Corpus Christi. She is a veteran of the 82nd Airborne and believes that every person must have clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, safe and healthy food to eat, and an environment free from harmful pollution and chemical exposure. Next to her, we have I'm going to butcher her name. We have Johanna Huro Torres. Oh, I got it right. She is an energy campaigns analyst with the Sierra Club, where she provides strategic research and analysis for campaigns to stop the build out of U.S. fossil fuel export facilities. They are the co-author of the Sierra Club's U.S. LNG export tracker, a public tool that provides near real-time data on large, long-term U.S. LNG export projects to support the knowledge and the efforts of organizers, frontline folks, and environmental activists. And last but certainly not least, we have Naomi Yoder. Naomi is the GIS data manager for the Bullard Center for Environmental and Climate Justice. And I know all of you know Dr. Robert Bullard. They are they specialize in issues in Texas and Louisiana, and they have extensive experience with additional Gulf Coast environmental areas of concern, including liquefied fossil gas, aka LNG, petrochemicals, pipelines, pollutions, disasters, and wetlands. So I want you to give it up one more time for this panel who will be coming to you right now.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Oh, I thought you couldn't hear me. Um, First of all, thank you all for having me. Thanks to Roishetta, our moderator, and thanks to Jan Fonder, who came to St. James to see what we're going through. You have to come to see it. You just can't sit back and hear us talk about it. You have to come to see it. Jane came to see it. And I forgot to tell her that we have 100 and something storage tanks within a 10-mile radius. The oil storage tank, crude oil, there are storage tanks, and those oil tank spills. After Hurricane Ida, one of the tanks spilled, and I received phone calls telling me to come and see. So I came to see, and uh, Marathon is the facility. They did not report it to the parish that we had an oil spill. The people in Burden Land is the one who called me to report it. Then we did a video about it. Then after 2 weeks later, Marathon reported it to the parish. Parish didn't do anything about it. Parish don't even care. They are in the pockets of industry, so they don't care. The people down Burden Land get the smell. They're the one that called, and they had oil in the ditch. We called LDQ to come and see about the oil in the ditch. They came a few days later and said they don't see any oil. People call us, Rise St. James, to ask us to protect them. LDQ do not protect us. We are suing Formosa Plastics and LDQ. LDQ supposed to protect us, not Formosa. Formosa planned to build a $12 billion facility 2 miles from my home. And I said, no. I said, you will not come here. So it's been since 2018 when they applied. They are not here. And I can promise you this, they will not come. They have to go through Rise St. James. They already went through the parish. All the parish officials said yes. We said no. Another industry is called DG Fuels. They make jet fuels. They want to come right next to Moonshine. That's a little area called Moonshine. They want to come next to them. The people call us and ask us to fight DG Fuels. The CEO came to my house to meet with us, with me and my members and our attorney, and we told him to his face, he can't come here. He wanted to know why. I said, because we are full. We have 12 within a 10-mile radius. We can't take anymore. We can't breathe the air. Just like Roishetta said, it smells like a rotten egg. It smelled different types of odors. When I would leave my house in the morning to go to work, I would walk out the door at 6:30 in the morning, and that odor would hit you in your face. I wanted to go back in the house because it was so bad. So I had to drive to work smelling that stuff. Look how many years I worked and I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't know it was coming from the industries. I didn't know we were being polluted until I went to a meeting, a community meeting one day. Not because of industry, because of a friend of mine did not receive her contract as a principal. And that made me go to this meeting because that was a friend of mine. It hurted me that she wasn't going to be working in the system anymore because of all the corruption, all the politics. They do what they want to do. Right now, my grandson is being bullied because of the work that I'm doing. It hurts because they want me to stop, but I'm not going to stop. I told my daughter, we're going to fight the school. She kind of slow getting on board, but I do have an attorney. I'm going to fight whether she come or not. But I'm working on that now. I'm trying to talk to her to get the records because they won't give it to me. They'll give it to the parent. But I'm a grandparent. They should give it to me. So we're fighting with that and fighting with different things. I don't have homeowners insurance, all this other. That's not important. The important thing is we want to breathe clean air. We want to drink clean water. Look how many years we were drinking water with benzene in it. We didn't know we had benzene in our water until we started doing this work. When our former governor, John Bell Edward, announced in April of 2018 that his friends, Formosa Plastics, will be coming to St. James, I said, no way. So the organization that I was in said they couldn't fight it because the governor approved it. I said, who is the governor? He is a man, I'm a woman. Oh, well, yes, baby, we gonna fight this. They tried to discourage me to form an organization. They told me, let's stay with the one we have. But I said, the one we have is not fighting. They are so afraid of the governor of Formosa. So we left them alone. So in October of 2018, we sat down and decided. It was about 8 of us, and we were all upset and angry. We just wanted to fight. So we didn't know what to do, where to go, who to talk to. We just followed the lead of God. God led us to what we should do. And we've been going ever since. It's like we were in a jet plane, and God is the pilot. And we back there just going with him, and he's leading our way. So far, he led us so well that Formosa is not here. And we got rid of one plant in 2019 because we stood up. We gave marches. We went to the parish council meeting. We spoke up. That plant backed down. The CEO said he wanted to speak to me. I shooed him away. I don't want to speak to him. You want to put poison in my community. So I wouldn't speak to him. I was angry with him. I would go to the meetings angry, fussing. Then after that, South Louisiana Methanol, they wanted to be built right next to our park where our children play. Our parish official approved it. So we kept on fighting, kept on complaining. They packed up and they left. But Formosa want to be stubborn. Like they want to show us, we are going to show them. Satan is going to bring Formosa down. Satan is Formosa. That's the kingdom that is gonna fall because Satan is Formosa. Formosa comes here to destroy our lives, to destroy our land, to destroy our air, our soil. But it's not going to happen in St. James. It shouldn't happen anywhere. People have lives. People need to live. People need to breathe clean air and drink clean water. Let our children go outside in the yard and play like my grandchildren used to play. Now, when they come to play in the yard and have Easter egg hunts and stuff, they come back in the house with rashes on their bodies. They can't stay outside for a long period of time. So many children in my community have asthma. So many women are having miscarriages because of the pollution, especially down Burdenland. Burdenland is the worst area in St. James Parish. I mean, 2 industries on each side. One name is Marathon and other one is New Star. When you go down a little bit further to Chapman Town, where I'm from, we have Argonne and New Star. They're sandwiched in. People are getting sick. They can't breathe the air and they are dying. All we want to do is live a healthy, normal life. We want our children to stay in St. James and not move away. They go to college. They say they don't want to come back to this pollution. You can't blame them, but we got to clean this pollution up so our people can come back home and stay home with us. So I know my time is up, but I want to thank you all for having me. Thanks, Roishetta. Thank you, Jane.
I'm a projector, so I'm going to keep it back a little bit. If I can. Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Ariel Doherty. I live in Corpus Christi, Texas, right there, right on the Gulf Coast. Well, actually, I live in Gregory, Ingleside, which is just to the north of Corpus Christi. Like I said, I'm a veteran, and it's funny, Jane, that you were talking about all the things that are going on with the government, right? So as a veteran, I think about this little anecdote. When soldiers came back from the Civil War, they had to go to Washington, D.C. to be able to get their measly little pensions. Some of them had no way to get there. And do you know what their pensions, their paperwork were bound with? Red tape. Now, 2 centuries later, still fighting for that kind of stuff. And I mention this because every year around this time, I think about what we went through, even in the current age of armed forces, and I think about how we felt, what we saw, what we fought for, and who we wanted to come home to. Now, in Afghanistan, my forward operating base, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. My forward operating base in Afghanistan was a direct post for a half-mile-long burn pit. We were literally living 20 meters away from a burn pit, burning everything from metal and sand barriers, plastic water bottles, human waste, general trash like batteries, oil cans, wires, asbestos. And do you know who the biggest indentured of stockholding shares for Citibank is? The US government. And they sanctioned all of this. We even hired locals from the village, because the government told us to help us clean it all up, because they were doing the work that we didn't want to do. And guess what? We left it there to these locals that didn't matter to the government or to the people funding them. And we as soldiers also came home with the after effects. We have thyroid diseases, endometriosis. It's staggering, and it's really, really hard. And the fact was that one single soldier, that's all that we were to them, one single soldier. And no one person, regardless of their race, their gender, their nationality, or where they live, should have to survive in areas that harm them this way. And as Hop Hopkins stated in his op-ed to the Sierra Club, you can't have climate change without sacrifice zones. You can't have sacrifice zones without disposable people. And you can't have disposable people without racism. But the crazy part is the atrocity of this environmental racism by our government, by the corporations it supports and defends, is not happening just across our borders. It's not happening just in our military. It's happening here at home, where we live, within miles of our families, our homes, our cities, our schools. They were trying to build an ammonia plant 1 mile away from my kid's primary school. And this is here. This is in Texas. This is in a populated area. So we have more work to do, for sure, because if these things keep happening and keep coming up, then we obviously haven't done enough yet. Now, Citi has used elaborate mathematical risk models, which has looked at mortgages in very particular geographical areas, like Texas, Louisiana, New York, Los Angeles, and Detroit. This is like compounding interest in your bank account, except in the exact opposite direction. It keeps getting worse by an exponential factor. Citi has paid hundreds of millions of dollars in bonuses to its employees, more than 1,000 of its employees. And this is after it received $45 billion of TARP funds from the government. Inflation, that would be $62.5 billion today. And like I said, the US government is still, to this day, the majority holder of Citi's stock. Does anyone feel like this money could be recycled back to fix the problems that Citi has already created instead of allowing them to create more? They're even contracted by the DoD for private military operations in order to fund their credit cards, but won't give our troops or the poorer countries that we're in the same decent human courtesy by making sure that we just have clean air to breathe. Now, around our coastal bend, where a Cheniere plant was erected between 2018 and 2019, and it's already debated by all locals, the price target in the market has risen from $16 to $26. Citigroup holds the indenture for all 4 LNGs in the area of the coastal bend. And still, after all of their bailouts, after all of their subsidies, they're still floundering, not just as a corporation, but in the market. In January 2024, Citi announced that it would be cutting 20,000 jobs from the company. And if that's not enough, as of March 31st, the presidential executive order 14096 demands that by March 31st of this year, that there should be a coordination with an interagency council, and it should be in coordination with the White House, and they'll hold at least one public meeting a year. Has anybody seen that? Anybody? Anywhere? So, and like I said, I live in Corpus Christi, and from a very independent poll that I've taken, I brought it with me just in case. When asked about local environmental pollution affects you on a scale of 1 to 10, the median ratio was 8.9. When asked about the biggest causes of environmental pollution area, 92% highlighted industrial activities, solid waste, and combustion of fossil fuels. Citi is a leading contributor to projects in all 3 of these matters. And just to let you know, in Gregory, Ingleside, where I live, Cheniere, where the plant is, 93% Hispanic with a poverty rate of 30.78%. 10 miles down the road, in Portland, which is 49.6% Caucasian, poverty rate 9.6. So that's a little staggering. These are real people. You know, politics aside, they're doing it all over the country. It doesn't just affect us. Now, I just want to end with this. Decisions are made by those who show up. Look at this. We have shown up. We as a collective people, not just a few people, not just one race, not just one gender or one place that you live. We need to make sure that our inalienable rights by the government are upheld, since all men are created equal. Disbanding environmental racism, especially by Citi, should be one of their forefront purposes, not at the bottom of the ladder. And not just locally, but federally and globally. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right. I'm Johanna Huro Torres. I'm an energy campaigns analyst with the Sierra Club, and I'm so grateful and thankful and honored to be here amongst you all. As the last decade's fracking boom turned the U.S. from a gas importer to a gas exporter, companies have been racing to build liquefied natural gas or liquefied methane gas, or LNG, export projects in the U.S. Already, the U.S. has become the biggest LNG exporter, and there are enough export licenses already approved to triple our current capacity. Of the 4 operating and proposed projects in the country, 34 of them are in the Gulf South. That's 4 out of every 5 projects. If all become operational, every year these 34 projects would emit the same greenhouse gas as 579 million gasoline-powered vehicles or 625 coal plants. These terminals also generate harmful local pollutants like fine particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, and flare, often emitting noxious fumes. And where are they mostly being sited? Largely in and around low-income and Black and Brown communities. When applying a comprehensive climate vulnerability assessment from the Environmental Defense Fund and Texas A&M University that incorporates socioeconomic vulnerability, pollution exposure, health outcomes, infrastructure conditions, and climate and environmental conditions and risk, we find that the negative cumulative effect on these communities is worse than 88 to 99% of what the rest of the country experiences. To put it simply, these communities are disproportionately impacted and overburdened to an extreme extent. And Citi is guilty of perpetuating this environmental racism. As of today, Citi has provided nearly $1.7 billion in direct financing to 4 LNG export terminals in the Gulf South. And this is just the direct financing for specific LNG projects. Citi also gives LNG companies blank checks to do their business in the form of corporate financing. LNG developers could not build these projects without billions in funding from big banks like Citi. Citi funded Cheniere's Corpus Christi and Sabine Pass terminals, the oldest and biggest operating terminals, which are both currently working to expand to be even bigger. Citi has been directly funding these terminals every year since 2018, including as recently as last month. Cheniere's Corpus Christi terminal has violated its permitted emissions limits for soot, carbon monoxide, and volatile organic compounds hundreds of times. In 2019, Citi funded Cameron LNG, a terminal that has a documented history of failing to meet its emission limitations and reporting requirements, despite modeling confirming that Cameron LNG contributes to the local community experiencing nitrogen oxide pollutant levels above what is allowed by federal standards. Citi provided over $370 million in funding for Sempra's Port Arthur LNG terminal when it reached final investment decision a year ago. In fact, Citi took on the additional responsibility of advising Sempra on the transaction, meaning Citi played a critical role in helping the project get financed and start construction in a severely overburdened environmental justice community. Citi is also acting as a financial advisor to Delphin LNG, a proposed export terminal offshore of Louisiana, which would also require some onshore facilities. Here again, Citi has signed up to play a critical role in helping this project get financing and come to fruition. We know that for Citi to support these projects, it had to vet them internally. By funding these LNG export terminals, Citi put a stamp of approval on forcing Black and Brown communities in the Gulf South to be sacrifice zones for the fossil fuel industry. And we know that many other projects are trying to get financing right now, meaning they are talking to banks like Citi, asking for multi-million-dollar loans. Like all banks, Citi is responsible for the impact of the companies and projects that it finances. This is a critical time for Citi to end its financing of environmental racism and climate disaster by ceasing financial support for LNG. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am Naomi Yoder. I am a GIS data manager and a researcher at the Bullard Center for Environmental and Climate Justice at Texas Southern University. And I'm so honored to be here. I feel so inspired by all of you and by all of you attending. So thank you. So I wanted to talk about pollution and chemical disasters on the Gulf Coast. hurricanes and disasters are a common occurrence on the Gulf Coast. And the Gulf Coast is also, as you've heard and some of you know very well, home to the largest industrial corridors in the country. Again, as several people have mentioned, you can't understand this until you see for yourself. It's like nothing you've ever seen if you don't live around it. These areas, I'd like to name them. They're areas like the river parishes or Cancer Alley in southeast Louisiana on the Mississippi River, and then greater Lake Charles in southwest Louisiana. And then in Texas, we have Port Arthur, Beaumont, the Houston Ship Channel, greater Freeport, and Corpus Christi. Texas and Louisiana combined account for over half of all polluting petrochemical production in the United States. Half. 8 out of the 10 largest oil refinery chemical complexes are on the Gulf Coast. The Houston Ship Channel area alone is home to over 600 oil and gas chemical plants, accounting for 44% of the nation's petrochemical production. With all of these oil and gas facilities come extraordinary pollution, hazardous waste, which is often injected underground, and land loss. In addition to the operating facilities, there are tens of thousands of used and abandoned oil and gas wells across both states and the Gulf of Mexico. And the legacy of racism on the environment on the Gulf Coast is rampant, with the same chemical corridors and pipelines occupying neighborhoods where people were enslaved. These same facilities also occupy indigenous lands, communities of people of color, and areas with lower monetary wealth. This all exists in an area of volatile weather and hurricanes, all of which are getting to be more intense and more frequent due to climate change. Along with the most lax environmental regulations in the country, disasters make the Gulf Coast a recipe for climate and environmental injustice. Myself and my colleague conducted a study of pollution incidents following Hurricane Ida. The pollution in southeast Louisiana from Hurricane Ida was extraordinary. Hurricane Ida was a Category 4 hurricane, about 200 miles across in 2021. We found thousands of records of pollution, most of which had no information about what was spilled or how much. Of those, we found about 150 that actually listed some kind of chemical. For those, a total of 5,550 barrels of fuels and oils were spilled. The actual number is easily 10 to 20 times that. And if we do the math, and we just said 10 times that, that would be 2 million gallons. 2 million gallons of fuel and oil spilled. As for air pollution, we found about 730 tons of toxic pollutants were released, which is certainly more than would be considered safe or normal. However, this number is also even more pronounced of an underestimate, as air pollution is not reported or tracked in a disaster in Louisiana, despite, after Hurricane Ida, the air being choked by sulfuric fumes, black smoke, acrid taste. These releases were clustered in the river parishes, which are composed of largely Black and low-income populations, and in what we call the bayou parishes, which are areas of large indigenous Louisianans. Another study showed that during Hurricane Harvey, air pollution, and after Hurricane Harvey, air pollution exceeded 2,900 tons, more likely, the most likely of which were to be in Hispanic and poor communities. Flooding from Hurricane Harvey was worse in Black neighborhoods. These numbers are shocking, and what's even more shocking is that they're not out of the ordinary. Chemical disasters during a weather event or otherwise are an all too common occurrence in our industrial corridors and in our beleaguered communities. There are hundreds of spills and releases every week in Texas and Louisiana. From chemical transport trucks to explosions at a plant to dozens of plants spewing pollutants at once in an extreme weather event, Fenceline community members are all too accustomed to massive pollution incidents. And what's more, the normal background is a license to pollute. We are told to stay inside or limit our driving. And while individual actions do matter, this is certainly not just to be suggesting that we individuals need to change a system with our individual actions that is rigged, and the people that suffer the most are people of color and those with lower incomes. And this situation is not limited to the Gulf Coast. Environmental justice and racism is embedded into the fabric of this nation from colonization onward. The validation of one person owning another as currency or wealth happened through the banks, enabling the enslavement of billions of people in this country. It is high time that the banks and the financial system take responsibility for upholding human rights and make real anti-racist policies. Isn't it true that clean air, clean water, self-determination, these are all basic human rights? There's no reason that Citi should... Thank you, Freud. There's no reason that Citi should continue to finance this war on poor people, people of color, and the environment. Thank you.
You know, I always bring my ancestors into the room, and I feel like they were behind Naomi's tongue just then. It was just, they were like, stop calling them Citi at this point. But that was a lot. Whew. That was a lot of information in such a short time. So right now, what I'm going to ask is that first of all, let's give this whole panel another round of applause. And right now, I'm going to ask each of you to get as quiet as you can. Close your eyes if you would like, and just reflect on the things that you've heard, the new things that you learned, and what actions are you going to take? Also, what actions would you like Citi to take? So we're going to do that for 2 minutes. The first minute, I want you to sit quietly, reflect. And the second minute, I want you to take the paper that's in your chair and write down your thoughts. In this second minute, if you would like to consult with your neighbor, talk to them about some of the things they heard before you write your thoughts, please feel free to. We're going to give you 1 minute to write those thoughts down. I know a minute is short, but I know many of you have a lot to say. And they're going to collect those cards from you as they walk around.
No, that was amazing. I feel like I get to know you. Like, well, that happened for a reason.
Sometimes.
I wish I could have planned that, you know? I wish I had thought of that.
Okay, guys, we're going to ask that everybody comes back in. We're going to wrap up those 2 minutes so we can wrap up this first panel. So now please hand your cards or your questions to the people walking around with maybe their hands up. Please hand your cards to the people walking around with their hands up.
Exactly. And, you know, I mean, there's also the stress of knowing this stuff, right? Like that I've been exposed or I'm part of, you know. Yeah.
You have a
Yeah.
question?
It's so hard. It's really like, it's pervasive in many ways. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for being here.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I need your attention. I need everybody to either return to their seat or if you're having a conversation, I need you to exit the room. I need you to either return to your seats or if you're having a conversation, you can go out into the hallway so that we can continue the panel. So there were many questions and thoughts that were submitted, but I have one here that we're going to ask just because of time. And we know we started late, but we want to get back on track so that we can end on time. I'm going to give just a couple seconds for the people in the back to either go back to their seats or quiet down some, just out of respect for the panelists and the hearing officers who are here. So the first question to the panel, and it's specifically is for Hannah. It's for you. Can communities file lawsuits for air pollution under the Superfund law? And just to answer it as quickly as you can.
I will say, so air pollution is under the Clean Air Act. So Superfund is specifically for sites that have been designated by the EPA. So I would say this requires consultation with an environmental attorney. But certainly there are avenues which our colleagues at Sierra Club and some other organizations have been challenging the permits for these facilities. And so, you know, this is being done. Certainly, I think there's an opportunity to do more to challenge what these companies are doing, particularly when there is evidence of their violating their permitting requirements.
Thank you so much for that answer. The next question that we have from the audience, I'll pass it this way. I'm gonna hand it this way. Okay. The solidarity we are engaging in today is the only way we win. What do we as a panel want to see from our allies here in New York? So I'm going to allow each person to answer that just a couple of seconds each. What do you want to see from your allies here in New York?
I want to see our allies get on board with fighting Citibank and other banks that's trying to finance these monsters that are poisoning us. So that's the first thing I want them to see, to divest and denounce these banks.
I think a really important thing is for them to see that it's not just happening in Texas or Louisiana or California or anything like that. That headquarters is right there. It's in their backyard. They can do something about it. It's not just out of sight, out of mind. It is in their sight. They walk past it every day. And so realizing that that problem is in their backyard.
Yeah, I would say to apply pressure to the banks headquartered here for sure. Also to try to connect with folks from the Gulf. If you can, try to get down there, or, join an organization, support the work that's being done. It goes a long way, and we really appreciate that.
That's essentially my answer to, learn our stories, get to know us, say our names, say the names of the communities, and please come see for yourself.
We have one more question. I'm going to allow her to ask it because I cannot read it from the paper.
The question is written Bengali, so that's I'm just interpreting. She said, "My name is Jinat. I'm a drum member. I work in school, and what I see in the school, maximum kids suffering asthma. So I have a question. This is the reason of the pollution. She live in actually Bronx and work in the Bronx school. So this is her question."
She wants to know is the pollution the cause of asthma? Who wants to answer that on the panel? Okay, we're going to pass it down to Naomi. If you can pass Naomi that microphone. Naomi is our scientist on the panel.
It's very likely related, at least, if not caused by pollution. So there's a lot of health effects of pollution from petrochemical facilities, oil and gas facilities, but also from gasoline powered cars and diesel trucks. So in New York, there's a lot of traffic and there's a lot of pollution from that traffic, in addition to other sources of pollution. So there are other health effects that we might experience on the Gulf Coast in fence line communities that are in addition to that. But the high rates of asthma, there are exceptionally high rates of asthma in Black communities, and this is one of the reasons, is that those Black communities tend to be more likely clustered around large sources of pollution, especially particulate matter and nitrogen oxides. So I just want to list some other health effects that we have especially from petrochemical facilities. So asthma, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, stroke, heart disease, reproductive ailments, as someone mentioned. And then I also just want to talk about, for 1 second, the mental health issues, because it can take a lot of forms. It can be anything from disease to living with the stress of knowing that there will be another disaster at some point soon, and the worry of that. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you all so much for those questions from the audience. At this time, I'm going to ask the hearing officers if they have any questions or last statements. Just a couple of seconds each. Start with you, Hannah. Oh, sorry. I keep forgetting we're sharing.
Sharing is caring.
We don't have time for any more questions from the audience.
If you want to go. I don't have a question.
Not a question, but just a realization that we are all in this together. And the cliche that came to me is the people united will never be defeated. And so thank you, each of you.
Just a comment, which is I really dig the femme energy that's up here right now. Just gonna point that out. I think that's a beautiful thing, and it shows our pushback also on bringing back the balance that's missing from our connectedness. So, yeah.
I do want to comment that these stories are really powerful, and it's stories that Citi is not telling, right? They're not telling that to their customers. They're not telling that to their investors. They're not telling that to their regulators, right? So we need to be really loud and communicate that these are the impacts from their financing. And so I really appreciate your telling your stories.
And now we'll have one final sentence from each of the panelists.
I would like to invite you all to come on a talking tour in St. James, like Administrator Regan came. And when he saw what we were going through, it touched his heart. And he also came out with some new Hans rules. And those Hans rules is in our favor. If the plant want to come in and they can't meet those standards, they will not be able to come in. For example, if Formosa Plastics tried to come in, and if they will emit ethylene oxide, they have to meet that 0.3 standard. And you know they're not going to meet that. They can't function with that lower level. So we have hope, and we thank God for Administrator Regan for coming to see about us. That's why we invite everyone, especially these politicians, especially Citibank, and all these public officials to come and see what we're going through, see for yourself, and make your own decision. Thank you.
I guess I just wanted to say that I've never been a part of anything this powerful before. And it's flabbergasting to me to get to be a part of it. And I just wanted to thank, first of all, the Texas Campaign for the Environment for including me, and for now all of you including me in our fight for justice. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say that, knowledge is power. Learn as much as you can about this, fight back, bring light to a lot of the stories and, the things that banks like Citi don't want to be out in the air. And that, all of us, we could all play a part in this fight, and who knows what we can all do. So definitely join. And I'm just reminded by the audience question about pollution in the Bronx. I grew up in the South Bronx. I have family members with asthma, and I know what it's like. And it just reminds me that the fight in the Gulf, the fight all around the world, the fight, just back home for me, it's all the same. And like Sister said, yeah, united we can win.
I think we need bold action and bold solutions. We need justly sourced, just transition. And, we don't need to settle. We don't need to settle. Net zero is great, but it's not zero. So let's keep working towards zero.
Woo. Thanks again to all of these amazing people for being up here today. Environmental racism is the term used to describe the disproportionate burden of environmental hazards and pollution that marginalized communities, particularly minority and low-income populations, face. Citibank is funding environmental racism. So today, what we are demanding from Citibank is that to begin addressing the harm caused by the $332 billion in financing for fossil fuels that Citi has provided since the Paris Agreement in 2016, Citi must commit to dramatically increasing financing of climate solutions and a just, equitable transition for and led by communities on the front lines of the climate crisis. This commitment must be overseen by an advisory committee made up of majority Black, Indigenous, low income, and global climate leaders. Citi executive leadership will publicly acknowledge and apologize for the harm they have inflicted by financing the fossil fuel industry, including the human and ecological mass deaths as a result of the climate crisis. The executive leadership will meet with community leaders on the front lines of the climate crisis. They will travel to regions that have been harmed to understand firsthand how the projects and companies that Citi finances have affected everyday people. Immediately, they will stop financing new and expanding coal, oil, and gas projects and any companies expanding fossil fuels. They will rapidly phase out all fossil fuel financing and demonstrate year-on-year reductions in fossil financing in line with minimizing climate harms and limiting global warming to well below 1.5 degrees Celsius. They will ensure that clients fully respect all rights of indigenous peoples, including the indigenous rights to free, prior, and informed consent, otherwise known as FPIC, as articulated in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. They will end any financing of projects or companies that demonstrate a pattern of violating human rights and self-determination, especially for indigenous, Black, low income, and other people of color communities. They will adopt a strengthened sectoral and regional exclusions policy, including for coal, LNG, Arctic, Gulf South, and offshore ultra deep drilling. Scaled up investments in renewables and proven, not false, proven climate solutions in line with a just transition and the needs outlined by the International Energy Agency beyond the inadequate goals currently set by their bank. Citibank is funding environmental racism. If Citibank wants to keep its reputation, if it wants to keep its investors, if it wants to continue to be a well-known bank, Citibank must get in a line with our demands. If not, we will continue to come for Citibank. We will continue to shut down Citibank. We will pull our funds out of Citibank, and we will let the world know that Citibank is financing this crisis that we're in. Before this panel walks off, I want to invite each of you in the audience and everybody watching to join the LNG Gulf Fossil Finance Hub. That is how many of us know each other. This is where we develop strategies to fight against these large financial institutions, both here in the US and globally, who are funding environmental racism. I would like to invite any of you who had questions for this panel, who did not get a chance to ask those questions, to please email Marlena. Marlena, where are you? This is Marlena with the red sweater. Her email is Marlena, MARLENA, at climate, CLIMATE, organizing hub.org. You all can also get with her with your questions or concerns, and she can get that to each of the panelists here today. Also, they will still be around, even though their panel is over and the next panel will be coming up. They will be around. So again, I'm going to ask you for one last round of applause for this panel as they exit. You all can go to your seat. Ooh, and now as they exit, we're going to have another amazing panel come up. And this panel is entitled Defending Indigenous Peoples' Rights and Sovereignty. So everyone on that panel, please come up now. That's you. That's you right there.
I know, right?
It's your camera right there.
Yeah.
The protest coming Thursday. I'm gonna be here through Wednesday. I'm not gonna be here Thursday morning. I'm gonna. I'm at the one Wednesday, but I'm not the one. On Wednesday, you'll be making the state demands. I don't know. Am I the one making the demands? Despacio, vamos a liberar más. What am I sure? I'm gonna look quick.
Yes, very quick. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna.
Cuando Lidia se pare a hablar, cuando Lidia empiece a hablar, ustedes se paran. ¿Okay? No, se paran. Se paran cuando Lidia termine. Lidia, cuando Lidia empiece a hablar, ustedes se paran. Olivia,
James, do you have time for a photo with me? I'm just trying to get out of James' photo.
Yeah, they're from the Amazon Peru. Yeah, the Amazon of Peru. They are fighting another company that is owned by Citi. Yeah. And then contact. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just, I just want to.
Se despega.
Pida una diciendo que pongan nota. He's from natural nation in the Amazon. She's from the Traplan. Sí, para que puedan hablar esto y luego van a venir a ronda.
Okay, so Tara, so yes, she's gonna be the host of this panel. I'm still the coordinator, but she'll be she just wanted to give you a little background. Thank you.
Y cuando Lidia habla, ustedes se paran.
Yeah. Okay, everyone, if I could please ask you to take your seats. If you are having a conversation, please feel free to continue your conversation in the hallway. But now I'm going to ask everyone to please take their seats so that we can give respect to this next panel. You all know I'm not above calling out names and outfits if you're still standing and talking. If you don't know that, you will find out today. If you're having a conversation, please take it outside the room. Otherwise, please take your seat so that we can give respect to the Indigenous panel who is about to speak now. I see a conversation going on over here in this corner. Okay, they stopped. They didn't want me to call them out. All right. It's because I have a big mouth, huh? Okay, the moderator of this panel again has been introduced, but she needs no introduction. She's done amazing things, and I actually don't have a bio in front of me. But what I will say about this person, well, one of them, particularly Tara, is that today, whenever she walked up and she saw me and she gave me a hug, and the first question she asked was, "How was I doing?" And whenever we meet each other like that and we ask that question and we give people the space, we find out that people are not okay. People are not okay. And Tara is a person who really cares if you're okay or not. And she wants to figure out how to help you be okay. So she offered for me and my children to come chase chickens. I said, listen, fighting these LNG facilities is like chasing chickens. So, hey, we may as well go chase some real chickens. and and of course, Sister Susan Francois, who will be assisting her in facilitating this panel. I just met in person last night over dinner and already can feel her amazing energy and just the passion and compassion that she has for people. So I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce the panelists for this section.
Look at you, got everyone in line. How's everyone doing? That was a lot, right? It was a lot of information, but it's what we're here to listen to, right? It's to hear the voices we need to hear. And I think, in the work that I've done, that means listening to impacted communities. That means listening to Indigenous peoples. It means listening to Black folks. It means listening to Latina folks. It means listening to impacted communities all over the globe who are telling these stories. And I think there's like a lot of emphasis always on like these horrible things that happen, but there's also like the little pieces where you hear about, oh, the plant wasn't built. The pipeline's still delayed. Pipeline's still not built, or the pipelines have been forever marred by our efforts, right? Now every new pipeline is, well, what the hell's going on over there, right? Like we need to show up over there. People are asking us to come. It also means that the funders and the shareholders are voting for these resolutions to recognize and respect our rights. The people that are actually funding the projects are asking their own institutions, upwards of 30% of the vote, voting in favor of supporting us. That's incredible progress. So yeah, anytime I feel that sadness, how are you doing? And I see that look, I also think about how it's like these little groups of folks, the little dirty kids in the woods, or the, whatever it happens to be, that force these massive institutions to move, that force them to respect and honor our rights and our children and their children too. So Citi is the second biggest funder of oil and gas in the world through its funding and supports the different projects. It's Indigenous people that have been speaking out all over the globe. There's some really incredible advocates in this room. So I'm going to pass it over to his sister to introduce these incredible folks. Oh, the mic, right, the mic.
Thank you. And yes, 30% of Citi shareholders have supported this the last 2 years, and we're hoping for a bigger turnout this year. And hearing these voices is so important. So over on the far, your right over here, Krista Mancius is the executive director of the Carrizo-Comecrudo tribe of Texas. Currently based out of Floresville, Texas, she's been working to help maintain and preserve the identity of the traditional teachings and language of her people. She continues to help with the frontline fights against border wall issues, LNG terminals, pipelines, fracking, SpaceX, and the continuous destruction and erasure of her Carrizo-Comecrudo's sacred sites throughout Texas. And her father will be presenting our resolution on April 30th. Next to her is Chief Namox, and he is a hereditary chief of the Beaver Clan, one of the 5 of the Wet'suwet'en Nation. The duties of hereditary chiefs are to protect the entirety of the 22,000 square kilometers of Wet'suwet'en territories that they are responsible for, and to protect them for the generations yet to come. And then in the middle here, with the rest of the delegation from Peru, is Olivia Bisa, the president of the Autonomous Territorial Government of the Chapra Nation in the Peruvian Amazon. She defied centuries-old patriarchal norms by becoming the first woman to serve as the president of the Territorial Autonomous Government of the Chapra Nationality at just 35 years of age. She takes a courageous stance with her brothers there against the destructive impacts of the oil industry, exemplified by her advocacy following a devastating North Peruvian pipeline oil spill. And each of them will have, just as with the last panel, time to share their testimony, and then we'll have time for questions. So, Olivia, if you would like to begin.
No se escuchó. No se escuchó. Ah, ok. Hola. Tamarim Tataris y Chingros. Buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Olivia Bisatirco. Soy la primera mujer quien ocupa como presidenta del gobierno territorial autónomo de la Nación Chapra, ubicado en el norte de la Amazonía peruana. Hoy me acompaña Neil Encinas, representante del gobierno territorial autónomo de la Nación Huampis, y Senat Irar Cisneros, presidente de la Federación de Nacionalidad de Achuar del Perú. Juntos representamos a 9 naciones originarias en el Perú, que hemos decidido unirnos para denunciar enérgicamente la explotación en nuestros territorios, la explotación petrolera en nuestros territorios. Nuestros territorios tienen un total de 16 millones de hectáreas, el equivalente a 32 millones de campos de fútbol, como para poder saber la expansión de nuestros territorios. La gran cantidad de nuestros territorios están bien conservados y poseen una gran biodiversidad. Por esta conservación no se da porque sí. La Amazonía y la biodiversidad no están ahí por arte de magia. Están ahí porque somos nosotros quienes estamos conservando y cuidando, y muchas veces sacrificando nuestras vidas para mantener intacto la biodiversidad. El Citi Group, el común denominador que nos trae a este espacio, ha financiado la refinería Talara en la costa del Perú, que tiene una inversión de aproximadamente 5.3 billones de dólares. Sin embargo, esta intervención ha sido una mala decisión, ya que la refinería requiere 95,000 barriles para poder operar diariamente, mientras que la producción en el Perú apenas alcanza a 40,000 barriles por día. ¿De dónde provendrá este crudo? Nos preguntamos. Esto va a provenir desde la Amazonía. Nosotros hemos venido a Nueva York a darles bien claro a Citi que reconozca nuestro derecho a decir no a proyectos extractivos en nuestro territorio. Nosotros nos negamos rotundamente a permitir la explotación del bloque 64, un lote que se creó sin consentimiento previo, libre e informado. Petroperú, la empresa financiada por Citi, tiene una historia alarmante de corrupción y graves impactos ambientales. Desde 1997 hasta 2022, el oleoducto norperuano operado por Petroperú ha sufrido 111 derrames de petróleo afectando nuestros ríos y nuestra fauna en nuestra Amazonía. Durante 5 décadas hemos sido testigos de los devastadores impactos de la industria petrolera en nuestro vecino del lote 192. Petroperú utiliza ahora tácticas de criminalización, divisionismo para operar en nuestro territorio. Estas tácticas van en contra de nuestro principio de buena fe en el proceso de consulta y consentimiento previo e informado. En el caso de mis compañeros Achuar, la empresa Petroperú no dialoga con los órganos competitivos legítimos del gobierno territorial, sino que dialoga con comunidades separando, utilizando en algunos casos el reparto de dádivas, promoviendo conflictos internos. En el caso de One Piece, el lote 64 se explota. Sus territorios servirán de tránsito de las barcazas de crudo. A pesar de que se ven afectados, la empresa continúa señalando que no son dentro del área y que no les va a impactar, señalando que, por tanto, no procede consultar con ellos. Personalmente, por estas acciones que nosotros venimos haciendo, las 9 autonomías, hemos sido perseguidos. Yo vengo siendo amenazada. Me han denunciado 6 veces. No han podido, no me han metido miedo con las denuncias. Empezaron a mi casa armados, llegar a querer matarme. Nosotros no cometimos ningún delito, solamente pedimos que nos respeten. Tenemos hijos. Cuando un hijo asesina a la madre, tiene cárcel. Pero cuando nosotros asesinamos a la madre tierra, no nos damos cuenta de eso. El pueblo indígena dice que la tierra es nuestra madre. La tierra nos da vida, pero algunos hijos son tan despiadados que le están asesinando a la madre tierra. Dios nos trajo al mundo para vivir juntos. Nos regaló la tierra para convivir en armonía, con amor, y no destruirnos mutuamente. Fuimos creados por una sola. Sin importar el país, el lugar, todos tenemos sangre roja. Y no es justo que por defender la existencia de la humanidad estemos siendo atacados, estemos siendo criminalizados y nuestros hijos estén siendo parte de eso. Nuestros hijos no tienen la libertad de ir a un parque a jugar porque tenemos miedo que lo asesinen. Y Citibank está siendo cómplice de eso. Asesinan cuando financian a estas empresas petroleras que están matando a la gente, porque matar a la humanidad es matar a la Amazonía. Somos nosotros quienes estamos cuidando. Afectan al pueblo indígena, afectan a la Amazonía, afectan a la humanidad. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. And now we will hear from Chief Namox.
Denny's 8 Sakai's 8 Sky's 8. I am Chief Namox. I am the highest ranking chief of the Beaver clan. I also carry the war chief name of Chief Queese. And I have to tell you, as a high war chief, the biggest burden that any war chief will carry will be the burden of peace. The last thing we ever want is violence and war. But that's exactly what is happening to our people. That's exactly what's happening to all the people of the indigenous world. We are the first ones to suffer. It is our land that they poison. It is our water that they poison. And we stand up and we tell them when they're wrong and they're not welcome, then they bring in armed forces on us. What we do for our children and our grandchildren, but we do it for your children and grandchildren too. When we become high chiefs, we take on a huge responsibility. The laws of the land come first, not the human. This planet will do fine without human, but it's what humans are doing to this planet is what we have to stop. And we have to stop things such as Citibank from continuing to do what they do. I've had the honor and privilege of travel throughout the world with the blessing of our elders, of our chiefs, to talk to banks about what they do. And I see it does make a difference. But the biggest difference is each one of you using your voices, being there, being present. If you're not using your voices, they control the narrative. And their narrative is wrong because they're not telling the truth. Telling the truth is easy. It's far better than telling lies. You tell one lie, you got to make up another one to cover it, right? And if you tell the truth, you speak from the heart. You tell a love story, the love of this planet, this love of humans, the love of the future. They don't know that. You have to realize that money doesn't have a conscience. We hope that humans do. We got to get to them. We got to tell them that they cannot continue this narrative of saying that destroying this planet is progress. We come from Canada, and Canada has this here world reputation of a safe place. Come to Canada, we'll look after you. It's not true when it comes to Indigenous people. You want to see the truth? Go online and see what happens to us. See how you feel when the police come through your door with axes and chainsaws. See how you feel when they arrest pregnant women. We, the Wet'suwet'en, were matrilineal. This very blanket I use was my grandmother's when she was Chief Namox. We haven't had European contact for that long, less than 150 years. My grandmother was alive when the first Europeans come on our territory. And yet look what they're doing. You know, in a love story, there's always ups and downs. Nothing is ever smooth. But if you truly love something, you'll always win. And that's what you're doing. You're winning. No matter what they say, you are winning because you're here, you're present, and you're being heard. Last year, I had the opportunity to go to talk to the Bank of International Settlement. And that's 65 central banks that control 95% of the world's GDP. And I often wonder when I talk to banks such as that, and I'm sure Citi does the same because the Royal Bank of Canada, who really, really is disgusting to us, does the same thing. They all have the same model. They'll listen, they'll placate, they'll put motions on the floor, but will they follow through? You got to realize that's your money. When they look after your retirement fund, when they invest your investments, that is your money, and you should be able to speak up and tell them when they're wrong. They should not be able to kill children. They should not be able to kill the water. They should not be able to say that the dollar value is more than the human value. We remind them constantly of what they do. Last year I was here in New York. We went to KKR, $660 billion company. Went right to their door and told them, you bunch of liars, here's the truth. And you got to carry high security because they want to kill you. I'm not a dangerous person. What I say is dangerous to them because it'll threaten them. It'll make you think. It'll make you know that your heart will steer you in the right direction. And you have to know that when you scare them, they will get violent because that's what they've done to us. Ourselves and our cousins of the Gitxsan, we've got a court ruling, Supreme Court of Canada ruling, December 11th, 1997. And in that court ruling, it says that we exist. I'm like, we existed for thousands of years before a contact. But we needed a Supreme Court of Canada ruling to say that we exist. 1997. I'm the son of a residential school survivor. And that residential school didn't shut down until I graduated grade 12, the very one that my mother went to. I'm the son of a Second World War veteran. And did my late father really, really go overseas to fight for what we go through today? For his grandchildren, great-grandchildren, to know that when you got the Royal Canadian Mounted Police coming at you, they are not your friend. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they created another arm of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. It was called CIRG, Community Industry Response Group. It's now called CRU, crew, not my crew, but it means Critical Response Unit. And they have every right to do whatever they want to do because they are funded by banks such as Citibank. They're fully supported by the federal and provincial government of Canada. So Canada is not this friendly neighbor that you have to the north. They're certainly not my friendly neighbor. We're a nation. We're non-treaty. We've never ceded nor surrendered one piece of our land. There's not one document out there saying that we had. You know, as recent as 2020, we did a memorandum of understanding with the province of British Columbia and Canada itself, saying that we are the authority on the land. You know what they did a week after we signed that document? They sent in their second raid of hundreds of armed RCMP, helicopters, armored vehicles. They even shut down the airspace so commercial vehicles can't go over as they were invading us. They did it 3 times, and that is your friendly neighbor to the north. And it is banks such as Citibank that does this. You got to remember that is your money. You know, when we're supposed to live in a democratic country, you're supposed to steer the government, not industry. Our country of Canada, the same as the United States, they fund oil and gas. They give them incentives to the billions and trillions of dollars to take away our democracy, to make sure that we are wiped out. Genocide is not a myth. It's not just a word. It's our daily life. And when we stand up and speak up, when our women are arrested carrying a child, stripped down, put in dog kennels at 40 below, put in jail and held, and then made to stand in front of a judge in shackles and chains in their underwear to strip them of all their dignity. That is what banks do. When you think about how we're supposed to be able to just live a daily life of being free and having enjoyment, and knowing that your women are facing this. I am a high chief. I am a male chief. We are matrilineal. When I introduce myself, I'll always go, Denny's ate you. That is male chief. Tsaka's ate you. That is female chief. Sky's ate. That's the most important one. Those are future leaders, future chiefs, son of chiefs. And that's what each one of you are, future leaders, by using your voice and standing up. Everyone can be a leader. Nobody has to be a follower, especially when it's banks that are committing genocide throughout this planet. I am very honored to be here because the power in this room, the intelligence in this room, the love in this room is what will win, and we win. I'm with Sultan. We don't lose. You know, often they'll come to me and they'll say, oh, you're a survivor. How did you make it to this? You're a victim. I'll never be a survivor nor a victim. I'll always be with Sultan. I'll always be human, and I'll always be with you. Mesai, kill.
Talking the cushion off. Ete yapele, mauta pele, met nawazo.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Christy Mencius, I'm with the Carisoko Micrudo tribe of Texas. And I'm going to start by saying something my dad has instilled in me for years. 500 plus years ago, people came overseas to do one thing, to take the resources out of these lands and ship them back overseas. 500 plus years later, they're still doing the same thing, continuing a genocide and erasure of indigenous peoples across the Americas. They have continued to erase and kill our people on the resources of the lands that was given to us by our Creator. We came out of creation from Mother Earth, and we were placed here for a reason, to protect her and our identity of our people, to live in peace with Mother Earth. We are not above creation. We are not below creation. We are a part of creation. And as Indigenous people, we've lived with those understandings for thousands of years. And we continue to let that fight about that we are just a part of creation. We're not better than it. We're not above it. We're just a part, that small part of creation that we need to have and live with clean water, clean air, pristine land, and the survival of our future generations to come. When we look back and we talk about free and prior informed consent, that is just a due diligence that these companies like the fossil fuel industry and Citibank, it's just a check box so they can continue to destroy and reap the benefits of the land for the profit in their pocketbooks. But who are they actually talking to? A lot of them say they send out these letters, but they don't actually talk to us directly. They don't come to our homelands. They don't come to our reservations. They don't come to the people that the land is originally theirs. They don't come to us. They send letters and they send out to other people. And if there's nobody says anything or sends a letter back, or if they don't respond back, that's what they consider a consultation. But they never speak to us. They never come to us. And there's a difference. Like in Texas, there is a long history of my people as a presence going back thousands of years. But we're not a federally recognized tribe, and Texas doesn't recognize indigenous people. They give proclamations, but that doesn't mean that they recognize them because they don't have any state land. They don't have anything to do with the state. It's just a proclamation to say they're the state's Indian. There are federally recognized tribes, but they came there by forced displacement. But the original peoples in the Texas history books, my peoples, who they can trace thousands of years throughout Texas, they never consent to us. But we are the history. We are the autochthonous people of the land. We come from the land. We're born from that land, but nobody ever consents of us. So for us, we took matters into our own hand, and we've come a long way to our fight to stand up as a non-federally recognized tribe. And we've been able to turn that against them. We've been able to stand up and fight and say, oh, here we are. Here's all the history that you decided to fail yourself on your so-called due diligence. Here is how we're going to fight you. Here's all the history, historical facts. This is our area of land, and we continue to use that to fight. Yes, as a non-federally recognized tribe, we do have talks with CBP, Homeland Security, every 30 days about what is happening at the border, the border wall issue. We stopped under Trump's administration 16 miles of border wall because it was being built on historical lands of my people. We went and fought them and told them that our people, those were our village sites. And what they do, they listen. And now when they do any construction on border wall, it has to go and they have to consult with us. So we do have federal entities that we work with that have to consult with us without being a federally recognized tribe. But there are other entities like oil and gas and Citibank and Chubb we've called them out and told them, you have to do a due diligence and a true due diligence. Stop sending out papers to people who don't have physical autochtonicity to the lands of that areas of South Texas and the Permian Basin. The historical significance is there. We are done. We're done for you not telling us. There is so many issues that are happening in the Gulf Coast with my relatives that were up here earlier. Miss Sharon, Roishetta, the people from Corpus Christi, we are in South Texas are trying to stop what it looks like in their neighborhood. We have the last part of the untouched Gulf Coast. Everybody knows where South Padre Island is, right? It's being threatened by Elon Musk and SpaceX, by Boca Chica. We are now suing the Texas Park and Wildlife for their land grab, the land grab that SpaceX has given to asking Texas Parks and Wildlife to give up Boca Chica Beach. Boca Chica Beach is the poor man's beach. It is the beach for the people who don't have money to go to South Padre Island, to the public beach. It's a free beach. You can just drive up and spend. People have gone there for years. It's also at the mouth of the Rio Grande River. That's a sacred site for us. Those lomas where the LNG terminals are being built, those are our sacred village sites. Those were fishing villages for thousands of years, built on these wetlands. And they're being threatened. And we're continuing to hold down who we are, but calling them out on their ignorance, not doing their so-called due diligence by standing up and fighting. Because we have to fight. We're tired of genocide. We're tired of tribal erasure. We are tired of not being recognized because we have historical significance. Our relatives come from, we don't live in colonial borders. Indigenous people have never lived in colonial borders because my relatives come on both sides of that river. All the way up north to Canada, all the way down to South America. Those are all my relatives. For thousands of years, we've roamed these lands, and our bloodlines have continued to roam these lands. And we will stand up and fight together because there might be few here, but we are many. So my thing is for Citibank, you promote yourself about being for the people, defund the fossil fuel industry, and invest in the people. Fund the people who are in trouble, who are people in the sacrifice zones, for the indigenous folks fighting to maintain their future generations. We are the people that you should be talking to.
Ooh, give them another round of applause. Right now, we're going to do something a little different than we did with the first panel. After the speakers, we took a couple of minutes to write down questions. But right now, what I want you to do is, again, close your eyes. And we're going to use our 5 senses. So first, with your eyes closed, I want you to imagine what you see in your community, in your neighborhood, your environment. What does it look like? With your ears, I want you to try to hear the sounds of your community. What does it sound like when you're out for a walk, when you're in your backyard, when you walk out of your front door, when you're sleeping at night? I want you to use your taste to think about what are some of the tastes when you're eating food or when you're drinking water. If you're just walking through your community, can you taste anything? I want you to use your sense of smell and think about what are those smells? What are the things that you smell that remind you of your community? Lastly, I want you to use your sense of feeling and touch to think about how does your skin feel as you walk through your community, as you take a bath with the water that comes from your faucets, your shower, if you sit in the bathtub, if you pick up mud or soil in your community, how does it feel? Is there any green spaces for you to plant anything in your community? What are the feels, the touches that remind you of your community? Now I want you to open your eyes and imagine with all of your senses what communities who have been up here have so eloquently showed you. You can now feel, see, smell, touch the things that these people are dealing with in their community. Things that Miss Sharon listed that she smells. The things, the sights, the dangers, the harms that they've each listed out. And then Krista saying so clearly that that's not what she wants to experience in her community. She's fighting against everything we already have, and she's trying to protect that. If you're not living in these situations, if you're not smelling these chemicals and these rotten eggs and everything else people have clearly stated, if you're not hearing the sounds of big construction and big trucks and tanker trucks all the time, if your skin isn't crawling and you're itching and you're getting rashes, if you can go to your faucet and drink the water and take a bath and it's all clear and pristine, if you can't taste heavy metals in your mouth, then I want to thank you for being here because we need you too. But chances are each of you in this room are also inflicted by this climate crisis that we're facing because you can't separate air, you can't separate water. So whether or not you have these industries in your community, you're still being impacted. So it is time for us to band together and fight. You've heard the call of these indigenous leaders. It is time for us to come together. We're all related. We're all family. We're all one person. And we're all fighting for this one earth. There is no planet B. So, with that said, we're not going to take questions from the audience right now. But if you have questions, we encourage you to write them down on the cards that you have. Again, get with Marlena. I don't know where she is. But Tara and Sister Susan are going to ask questions that we already have prepared to the panelists.
I actually had an exercise for you guys too, which is one that I make bankers go through. No, it's a fun exercise, I promise. So we just listen to voices from nature. Indigenous peoples hold 80% of what's left of Earth biodiversity. We are bringing the voices of nature into these places. That's what we're describing when we talk about our homelands, our love of our bloodlines and our ancestry and the places that we've walked and seen. So when we're in a room like this, I think about there are trees underneath our feet. There are stones all around us. It's just been manipulated and changed. Those voices are still present. Those voices are still here, always. The fibers in our clothing, everything that we are is of the earth. Those trees that are outside, they're part of this too. They're listening to this conversation, right? I think that there's so much care and love when we actually think and remember that there are so many voices around us all the time. Right now in this room, beyond our human voices, there are so many voices. I'm going to ask Krista to start us out, which is, I think, a question that comes to my mind is, what would be the most helpful for your fight right now in this moment? You guys have been fighting for a long time.
Support. A lot of support of what is happening across the Permian Basin to the Gulf. And I think the understanding that it all comes from somewhere. And if we can get a lot of help beginning in the Permian, because if we, like, when we talk about, a lot of us have the black snake prophecy. We have we have it too. It's on the caves in the South Texas. It's in the historic there. It's historically in the mark. It was their prophecies that we've had for thousands of years that are there in South Texas. It talks about the fracking and the coming of the colonization, but it also there's also a prophecy, the third prophecy, about the people coming with the arrows. And it's people of all colors. And you can see it's different people of all nations coming together in Texas to stopping what is happening, pointing the arrows to the system of fossil fuels and taking it down. And then the last prophecy is the prophecy of nature, and the nature coming back together after destruction and coming together. And I think it's, for us, the biggest thing that we need is people power in that focus, in that area. that is not happening about the indigenous impact that is happening with us. I guess we're strong and we've been fighting for a long time, but we need to bring that focus about us coming together, about what we're doing today, what we've been doing for the past 5 years, building a movement together to stop industry and stop what is happening.
Where can folks find you?
We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. Eshtokna Somisek on Instagram, or the Carisoko Micrudo Tribe of Texas on Facebook. But everything is always posted of what we're doing, where we're going, and how to reach us.
Oh, right. Oh my God, the mic.
So as shareholders, we have been meeting. Melody Maravillas is here. She's our Chief Financial Officer for the Sisters. And we met with Citi before they issued their Respecting Indigenous Rights report and after. And they told us, first of all, we asked that they had not consulted with Indigenous people in writing that report. And at that time, they were not planning to meet with your delegation, but I understand that they will meet with you. So my question first for Olivia is, what do you plan to tell them? And then after that, I have a follow-up question for Chief Namox, which I'll just put out there now. We have asked them, and it's in the demands that Roishetta listed, to ensure that FPIC is met as articulated in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And their answer was that applies to state actors, not to banks. And so how would you recommend that shareholders and the people address that? So if you could start, and then Chief. Olivia, what will you tell Citibank?
Cuando nosotros nos vayamos, Citibank dijo,
leave Citibank told us we don't want to meet with a group of people because they don't represent Amazonia. And we were going to tell them, Citibank, how do you think that a person that comes to represent in Peru? What do you think there? One person comes and represents and talks about Peru, and they're convinced about it. And they ask us, they ask, how are you representing the Amazonian nation? They don't have any logic. It's very clear their discrimination. We want to give them a message. We want to give Citibank a message. We will not allow them the exploitation and in our country. We demand respect to our rights, self-determination that has been debated in the Forum of Indigenous Israel. It needs to be naturalized. It doesn't need to be a very beautiful speech. In the self-determination and autonomy, they don't want this to be happening in our territories. There's political diligence that actually follow within standards that have been placed, such as the United Nations Declaration about the rights of indigenous people. Any policy that needs to be impacted, that has an impact on indigenous people from Amazonia, they do need to be consulted. And those people who have been impacted, they need to be consulted. The capital of a country cannot decide for those who live there. If they want to do policy, Citibank needs to come see what they're doing with their financing. That they actually they drink that water that we are drinking, that contaminated water, that polluted water. And we want to know if they're going to be able to drink that water is full of petroleum. Our children are condemned to die because of this. We will not rest. We will continue to fight. The stress of autonomous people is unbreakable. It has to be very clear. No bank, no state will be able to stop this strength. We are strength for nature. We love The magic word is love. Love amongst ourselves, but love where we live on the place of to love each other is to protect each other. We need to make sure that love is really prevalent in real life students. Thank you.
It's rather difficult to talk about UNDRIP because in Canada, they refer to it as aspirational. It's not law, it's not legislated. They upheld it. In British Columbia, it's called DRIPA. I was at the UN when Canada basically adopted it, but they kind of abused that adopted child now, didn't they? When they changed it to DRIPA, I was in legislature that day to make sure that I was going to hold our premier accountable. And again, you got to think about this. When they come through our doors with axes and power saws, with their attack dogs, the helicopters, the snipers, they train the police to say it's aspirational. That is not legal. Where is the teeth with it when the United Nations sends Canada 3 letters in the way that they have invaded our territories and the violence that has come to us and our women and our children? When they bring in man camps with thousands of workers who have no attachment to the land or the people, and they bring the drug and alcohol problem, when they bring in the social problems, and then they say that we uphold UNDRIP, that's not right. When last week I had the special rapporteur on water and sanitation coming on our territory, first time in history. And again, Canada is ignoring that. His report will be out in September, and it comes down to the same thing, UNDRIP. Where's the free, prior, and informed consent? If they talk about consent is exactly what was stated earlier. They'll send a letter. That's not consent because they've only done one way. They talk about reconciliation to us, and it's at the barrel of a gun. That's not UNDRIP. When we talk about human rights, which is then thought of as aspirational if you wear a uniform, where's the democracy in a country that is supposed to be so good and friendly? So with UNDRIP, it needs to have more teeth because currently Canada and the provinces are picking and choosing who sits on those panels to give advice on how it's going to be implemented. We're not involved as hereditary. It is, they get to pick and choose. And think about this, who's funding it? So of course they're going to get the answer they want. We constantly remind them, UNDRIP is supposed to be to give us all a voice, to make sure we're looking for the future. I've been involved with UNDRIP for well over 20 years. I think it was in the right vein, the right target, the right heart, but it's the way they're watering it down. And to say it's aspirational to come and commit violence on the land, air, water, and humans, that is not UNDRIP, not in my opinion. And Canada is not upholding it at all at this point. When they could put it on the table and dust off a report, when one little piece is what they can use out of it, now they want to remold it. That is not UNDRIP either. You know, in Canada, we have 3 political parties, and I don't mind naming them. They're the Liberally Violent Party, the Non-Democratic Party, and the KKK Conservatives. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all so much again to this amazing panel. I'm gonna just allow again for the space, if you want to get the card that you have in your seat, I think you have some more. If you have any questions for this panel, please write them down. If you have any suggestions, please write them down and give them to Marlena in the back with the red sweater on, and she will get them to each of them. If you would like to get in touch with them and find out about the great works that they're doing and get involved, again, get with Marlena. She can connect you with each of these amazing people. Before we end this panel, I just want to say that in the last several years, the United States has become the largest exporter of methane gas in the world. the largest exporter of methane gas in the world. Methane gas, like all fossil fuel pollution, has significant health impacts on Black, Indigenous, people of color, Black, Indigenous, people of color, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Do you notice that trend that has been happening across these panels? It's the same people who are impacted, from Louisiana to Texas to Canada and beyond. The same people, the people who were deemed as sacrifices long ago, the people who those in power and privilege felt like they could come into our communities, come into our countries, come into our territories, and take what was ours, what belongs to Mother Earth, who none of it should have ever been for any individual person, because it is all for us to share. But they monetized it, politicized it, and pushed us to the side. What are you going to do in your power? Because just as we sit here as the people in these communities that are impacted, each of you hold power as well. If you're an artist, you can paint a picture, you can write a song, you can play your guitar, you can beat on the drum, make music about what's happening. If you're a person who loves to speak, please come take the microphone and you can take over for me. If you're a person who loves to write, we need new policy. We need new laws. We need new legislature. Please write it for us. We need books that tell the stories of these communities. If you're a writer, please start writing. If you are a person who loves to just stay in the background, you don't want to be seen, you don't want to be heard, you just want to be in the background, guess what? We need some keyboard warriors. Because believe me, the oil and gas industry has plenty, and you don't know who they are. They have fake profiles. They pretend to be community people. They talk about us. They threaten us. They're trolls. We need those too. Because as soon as they attack us, we need our people to come right back under their posts. Because I don't have time and I don't address all of them. But just imagine how grand it would be if every time a troll came under, we came under them with a fact. We came under them with some statistics. We came under them with proof. So all of you who want to be in the background, come on, we need you. Stay in the background. Just type on the computer for us. But seriously, each and every one of you has a place in this movement, and we need you. I'm a mom with 6 children and a grandbaby who lives on the Gulf Coast in Southwest Louisiana, the poorest state in our nation. And one day I just opened my big mouth. And I kept talking until people listened. And I'll be honest with you, some of those people didn't listen until after this pause was announced. Some people didn't listen until after they saw that I was the top 5 people to watch against this LNG fight. Some people didn't listen until, so you may feel like people aren't listening. But believe me, they're listening. They know who you are. And we need you. We can't do it alone. So that is my plea to this audience and to everybody who is watching, because we gave our demands to Citi, and we're going to give them again after the last panel. But we also have demands for our fellow human beings who are in this room and beyond. The only way we're going to win is together. That is the only way. One person can kickstart it, but that one person may not be there to see their dreams come to fruition. Who's going to continue to carry the torch? And that's what each of you are here for. So again, we thank you all so much. Give this panel another round of applause. As they take their seats, we're going to ask the next panel to begin coming up. So thank you all again. Oh, yes, ma'am.
I want to ask when she was using the words motherland, like whenever we are going to our home, our said that we are going back home. Even even we are living here and we have US passports, but I love her words that it is our motherland because where are we are living, we have the rights with all the rights that are the person they are living there. But I have only one question that any part that we come to know that we can continue with the campaign that these people want sport and from where they have can give the sports to others. Thank you.
Yes, please get with Krista. I think her question is for you. Please get with them afterwards and ask them those questions, or you can get with Marlena again. Yes, thank y'all. So please, audience, do not get up and start moving because we're going right into the next panel. Of course, take care of your personal needs, but if you don't have to, we ask that you remain seated so we can get into the next panel. Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay, it's okay. We're gonna go use all this naughty stuff. Come here, come here, come here, come here. Come here, come here, come here.
Dana must have showed you my text. I told her to come save me. I was like, this one is mine. Not this one. Oh yeah. There you go. Dana brought me some water. I think I'm okay. This is the last film. Ooh. Thank you. See? Y'all don't even?
We have to.
Oh.
She's gonna flip out. I can feel it coming. We gotta get her some food. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long
She's getting that like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Say hello to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll support on the Citibank campaign.
For sure. Yeah.
Citibank on your Citibank.
When I seen I was on that side, I was like, of the country. I was like, okay, I should take the train. Thank you.
I got green. Yep, I got one. I think that's good. Thank you. Where you sitting? Down here. Marlena, where's Russell sitting? Okay. Okay, right.
এই যে
But Tara is
ছবি লাইভ
leaving,
স্ট্রিম
so-
হইতেছে ভিডিওর কোনো প্রয়োজন নাই এটা লাইভ স্ট্রিম
Want me to move
শুধু
over
দুই
and
একটা
then move
ছবি
the
that's
panel
it। সবার ক্যামেরা উঠাবেন না এটা বাজে লাগে তো
Okay.
এটা লাইভ স্ট্রিম হইতেছে তোমার
I'm perfectly fine. Yes. I'm trying to give it away.
I heard that.
Nobody
Sometimes when you
took
do
my
a good
offer.
job, you know, you're gonna have to really like, you're gonna have to throw it at some point. Water?
It's at the front.
Yeah.
In the big. Should I move over? Should I sit over here?
Yeah, why don't you sit over there?
Jesus. Oh yeah, it is. You can tell. Well, I bought a tablet from this black girl who has like a little business, and each of the tablets came with a pen. Yeah. I was like, "Oh, girl, this right in my hand." It does. I don't feel too glamorous today, but oh no, I want you to please. Yes, I want you to be your full self. Mhm. This is a building with walls. You're not the parliamentarian. Okay, now we're going to ask everybody to please take your seats. If you're having a conversation, please move the conversations outside of the room. We want you to have conversations. We just want to continue with the program. I'll read. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. This is why right, temporarily defeated, is stronger than evil triumphant. So, this next panel may come out of a bag on y'all. I don't know. But they're going to be truthful, they're going to be honest, and they're going to give you some hard facts. This panel is called Weathering Climate Harms and Advancing Solutions. And it'll be introduced by Sister Susan Francois. I always have to make sure. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it'll be introduced by Hannah Heineken. My apologies.
It's a pleasure to introduce this panel. As I just building on my opening remarks, climate change is an issue of justice and equity. Black, brown, indigenous, and low-income communities are bearing the brunt of the climate impacts, and they've contributed least to the problem. So they should lead the way in advancing holistic solutions to this climate crisis. Citi has made public commitments to invest in sustainability and racial equity. But as we all know, they continue to finance fossil fuel and petrochemical infrastructure expansion that is only going to worsen climate change, bring more pollution to these communities, and make them even more vulnerable to climate change and extreme weather events. Citi will claim that they are financing climate solutions by financing the fossil fuel companies even more to help them, quote, transition, or to fund carbon capture and offsets, to fund gas and all its derivatives like hydrogen or ammonia. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the remedy that's needed for the climate harms that Citi is financing? What does a real solution look like? We're going to explore this with this panel. So it's a pleasure to introduce the panelists. Rachel Rivera, next to Roishetta, is from New York Communities for Change. She's a board member for the group and chair of the Bushwick chapter. She's been a climate activist and leader in New York City for over a decade since Hurricane Sandy uprooted her family in Bed-Stuy, and Hurricane Maria devastated her in her Puerto Rico, where her family is at as well. Rachel has been leading advocate an organizer elevating the voices of her community to demand climate justice from elites and decision makers. She's a mother of 6 children and a proud Taino woman. Great to have you. We have Ashraful Hassan. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Has been a key member of DASIS Rising Up and Moving Drum since 2016. He's a chapter committee leader and organizes in the Kensington, Brooklyn membership base. Hassan has led around worker, racial, immigrant, housing, and climate justice. He aspires to organize alongside working class people to transform their lives, build power, and fight for long-term changes in society. It's great to have you. Gabriel Alexander, the youngest person on our panel, is a 10th grader attending the Outward Bound Leaders High School in Brooklyn, currently thinking about a future career in media production. Ever since starting high school, he's been looking for new ways to challenge himself and do his part in making a positive impact in the world. And being able to speak out about climate change and global warming is an amazing start. Welcome to this panel. Marcelo Frederico, do you want to raise your hand? Great. Is Afro-Indigenous, two-spirit, herbalist, data enthusiast, and former farm manager that is realigning with his decade-long history of organizing. Marcelo has helped organize multiple campaigns related to food sovereignty and climate justice issues, contributed to mutual aid networks, and is currently the divestment organizer for the Indigenous Environmental Network. Welcome. And lastly, but not least, Russell Armstrong, please raise your hand, is the Senior Director of Campaigns and Advocacy at the Hip Hop Caucus. He works on federal policy that provides environmental justice for marginalized communities most impacted by environmental racism. Great to have you. I will quickly turn it over to Rachel. If you can start us off, that would be great.
Hi, I came ill prepared. Sorry about that. But I'm gonna, most of you already know me, but for the people that don't know me, again, I'm a mother of 6. Prior to being a mother of 6, I was a mother of 5 when Hurricane Sandy hit. A little backstory, I was uprooted. My daughter now is 18 and still suffers PTSD when it rains a lot. And we still get flooded over here when it rains. So, you know, it's going to be kind of stressful for me. I also suffer PTSD. I have a 10-year-old that suffers respiratory seizures, meaning she will catch a seizure, have it while having an asthma attack, stop breathing, and I will have to administer mouth-to-mouth CPR on her. She is 10 years old. She's been suffering from that since the day she was born. I'm still going in and out the hospital at least once to twice a month because of the climate. When it's too hot, I'm in the hospital. When it's too cold, I'm in the hospital. When she just runs in the park, we go to the hospital because she will have an asthma attack and she will stop breathing. That is my normal. That is not a life for a 10-year-old that can't run in the park and play with her friends, let alone with her puppy. This is something that people, especially Citibank, don't understand. I am one of the frontliners. I'm always fighting and telling Citibank to get off their high horse and start divesting on fossil fuel and investing on a climate solution. My 18-year-old is scared when it rains. My family's been separated since Hurricane Sandy. So it's hard as a parent to know what's going on with everyone, trying to keep my family together when the government is saying, okay, your 4 older kids are 18, they could be on their own. As a mother, I don't give two flying. I'm trying not to curse. I don't care if my kids are 80 years old and want to still live with mommy. I am a mother. I'm not going to deny that from anybody. But when the government says they're 18, they could be on their own, it bothers me. When the government says, oh, your daughter suffers this, that is nothing. You can move on. Bothers me. When they cannot fund, I cannot pay my medical bills because of my daughter in and out the hospital because the government is saying she's just a bystander. She could not be alive and we won't care. That's what the government's saying to me. My daughter's medical bills I can afford. I'm a woman of minimum means, and I got to take care of my family. With this climate change also comes housing change. How many places are there that are empty because the basements get overflooded? How many lives did we lose because it rains and we get flooded? Here in New York, and I'm not talking about the Gulf South, which I know is hurricane season now. My island, Puerto Rico, we got hurricane season twice a year. And every time it gets worse and worse. And we are still bystanders that, how you say it? That we are just like disposable. Where's sacrifice zone? My island is a big island that's considered a sacrifice zone. Borinquen is a sacrifice zone. And how is that we got how many people on that island, which a lot of people know it as Puerto Rico. I don't call it Puerto Rico. I am Taína. I am Boricua. Esa es mi isla Borinquen. So that is just one area of the means of being sacrificed. You got the zones, my island's a sacrifice zone. My child is a sacrifice child. My other child is also a sacrifice child. So how many, I'm always going to be in Citibank, that is in my backyard, telling them to get off your high horse and give a fuck about us. We are living. Without us, where would you be at? You need our money so that you could keep going. But if we come together as a group, as one, as a family, because I already consider you my family, I consider everyone my family because we're fighting for a good cause. We're fighting for our future. We're fighting for our kids. I'm not going to stop until there's no air in my lungs, until I'm gone. And I'm still going to be around because I'm going to haunt their asses and tell them to stop the shit. Thank you.
I'm ready. Hi, I'm a student in Gabriel Fontez's class. He helped organize this action at Citigroup that we did last Tuesday. I think it was very powerful. And I'm honored to be here to speak to you guys. Every year during winter break, it seems as if my little sister says the same disappointing words to me. How come there's no snow this year? I miss making snow angels and having snowball fights. And every single year we have to explain the same thing to her. The earth is getting warmer. Snow is becoming rarer. Winter temperatures are rising and natural disasters are becoming more frequent and intense. In the distant future, snowball fights might just be an old story to tell your children. The media tells you to stop using plastic straws and to switch over to green energy. And while individual solutions like this do help, the general public is not the main offender of global warming. It's big corporations. We will not be the scapegoat for the 1%. Citigroup, the second leading investor of fossil fuels, is taking away your planet. This is all due to global warming, which is a byproduct of essentially everything modern society does nowadays. Drive, eat, use electrical power, etc. Companies like Citigroup have been backing new oil projects with hundreds of billions of dollars for years now that aid in the process of global warming. Over the last 6 years, Citigroup has invested upwards of $322 billion into fossil fuels, and they're only the second leading investor. Additionally, after tracing their money, it's been found that many of the projects that they invest in are rooted in indigenous, Black, or brown communities, which harm and damage those people. This is exactly why that we demand Citigroup halt all investments into new oil projects and instead invest money into green energy alternatives that could play a role in reducing carbon emissions in daily life. Additionally, Citigroup should donate money for communities that have been affected by oil projects that they had previously invested in. Companies and large banks like Citi have been silently destroying our planet for years, and it's time they use their money to help instead of hurt. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Russell Armstrong, the Hip Hop Caucus. I want to bring up the fact that this is my third time giving a speech about environmental racism, systemic racism in our democracy in the last 3 days. I was in DC speaking to Black lawyers about their role in democracy and how to shape that on Saturday. Yesterday, I was in Ottawa speaking to the Global Plastic Treaty and the need to stop production of petrochemicals and to clarify what chemicals are already going into products and into our blood. And now here I am today talking about the financing of the fossil fuel industry and how we need to stop that and divest from it. I'm tired, but I'm not that tired. I'm actually energized by seeing all the people here today and the fact that people who are watching online, because this is the most important issue of our time. This is literally going to be life and death for us, maybe our planet, but our planet will probably survive and we'll be the ones who are long gone. So we need to all come together and work together as brown people, as Black people, to stop this oppression of our lands, oppression of our water, this poisoning of our food and air. Now, how do we do that? We hold polluters accountable, first and foremost. Polluters like Citibank, who have been financing the fossil fuel industry, regardless of what they say. You've heard the demands that have already come up. But let me show you some numbers. Let me tell you some numbers of what's been happening. A report came out just a few weeks ago from As You Sow showing that Citibank didn't know that or didn't recognize that 42% of their clients don't have climate transition plans. You can't call yourself holding net zero accountability if you don't know if your clients even have net zero plans. Also, they're at the top of the Dirty Bonds report that just came out last month, showing that Citibank is financing fossil fuels from multiple angles. They are a financial advisor to Sempra in Port Arthur LNG, which tries to claim that they're bringing jobs to the area, when we all know that those dirty jobs don't actually produce any real economic benefits. And what they end up doing is end up poisoning the local communities and pushing out people from the land that they own. So what do we need to do? We need to stand up. We need to fight back. This is one of the ways that we can stand up and fight back. Hip Hop Caucus has been doing that by holding folks accountable. We've published reports on their racial equity audits and holding them accountable with partners like Color of Change and Majority Action. We've been to the front lines with partners such as Roishetta over here, talking about like these issues, bringing people together to fight against this racism. We've been talking about the connections all the way back to history, all the way back to all of these storms in the Gulf South and across the globe, whether it's from Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Rita, or even Hurricane Sandy. We're going to continue doing this, and I'm going to continue talking about it. But I want to give back some time so the rest of our panelists can talk to you about what they're doing too. And I'm sure I want to hear what many of you in the audience are doing as well. Thank you.
Osio Nagata. Hello, everyone. My name is Marcello Federico, and as Hannah mentioned, I am the divestment organizer at the Indigenous Environmental Network. Let me first just start by saying it's an honor to be here with such amazing Indigenous leaders, passionate organizers, frontline defenders, and climate experts. We all know why we've gathered here today. At this moment in history, banks and corporations have irreversibly changed the world around us for the worst in ways that will continue to alter the climate for centuries and impact humanity for generations. As the prophecies of our ancestors meet the scientific predictions of our time, we've come here to demand an end to the era of fossil fuels, and that Citibank must fully divest from planet-killing projects like the Dakota Access Pipeline, the Willow Project, Mountain Valley Pipeline, and too many others. They've put Mother Earth deeply out of balance on so many fronts, and that is exactly why it's time to hold Citibank and all the other guilty parties accountable for their crimes. We are demanding justice for the ecocide being inflicted upon Mother Earth that we know Citibank is guilty of. To give an example, Citigroup, or the National City Bank of New York as it was then called, had been instrumental in the continued destabilization of Haiti a century ago. This included conspiring with the Marines, the United States Marines, to invade, steal the gold, restructure its finances for their profits, and ultimately leave due to public pressure. Haiti is still currently struggling for sovereignty amidst external pressure from Western nations and banks. I pray that they find the freedom that they're looking for. Recent data from NASA and NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, indicate that in 2023, the average global temperature increased by 0.2 degrees Celsius and 0.3 degrees Fahrenheit. That makes last year the hottest year on record by an astonishing margin, according to these scientists, in part due to banks like Citi investing billions in the extractive economy of death. A recent study published last week out of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research in Germany, titled The Economic Commitment of Climate Change, projects that economic damages from climate change will be in the trillions of dollars, decreasing global income by an average of 19%. This average of 19% is within the range of 11 to 60% of average income decrease due to the climate damages that will ensue over the next 25 years. The study emphasizes that mitigation is advised, but adaptation is required in order to lower the costs of long-term catastrophes. And while the evidence points to a polluted and exceedingly hot future, I know in my heart that all of us here have the power to change that. And the tide is turning. People are waking up to the undeniable criminality of the financial institutions around us. Citigroup has options to meet the demands that we've set here today. And one of these options is to consider what the Indigenous Environmental Network has put out in the black booklets on the counter over there, called the Principles of the Indigenous Just Transition. And inside you'll see how IEN envisions an Indigenous just transition in alignment with UNDRIP and FPIC. As you all know, we cannot do this alone, and so we are calling on our allies and our partners in the climate justice movement and all of those who seek a sustainable future to join us in this struggle. Together, we must demand that Citi reject the commodification of nature, fully implement UNDRIP, FPIC, and provide the investment and resources needed for Indigenous nations, working class people, and the public at large in order to build a regenerative, just, and prosperous future. By embracing these Indigenous just transition principles, Citibank has the opportunity to be a leader in financing a future that respects Indigenous rights, honors the sacredness of Mother Earth, and supports the flourishing of all life. As our booklet states, to reclaim our future, we must change the present, and Citibank needs to be a part of that change. We are depending on our collective courage and action to fulfill our ancestors' prayers. Let us seize this opportunity. Let us fight for the future we deserve. And let us build a world in which Indigenous rights, the rights of Mother Earth, and the well-being of future generations, 7 generations, are truly protected and upheld. Wado, thank you.
আসসালামু আলাইকুম আমার নাম আশরাফুল হাসান আসসালামু আলাইকুম আমার নাম আশরাফুল হাসান আমরা যারা পরিবেশের বৈষম্য ঠেকাতে চাই
English. I mean the English. 1 second. Interpretation will happen afterwards, since we right now are having it's going to be done consecutive, so you will have interpretation after this speech.
আমি কনস্ট্রাকশন সেক্টরে কাজ শুরু করি পরিবারকে টাকা ফাটিয়ে সাপোর্ট করার জন্য। 2012 সালে যখন হারিকেন স্যান্ডি নিউ ইয়র্কে আঘাত করে, আমার বেসমেন্ট ঘর ডুবে যায়, সম্পত্তি আইডিয়া জড়েও ক্ষতি হয়। পরিবেশ দুর্যোগ নিউ ইয়র্কে আমাদের শ্রমজীবী অধিবাসীদের বেশি ক্ষতির সম্মুখীন করে, যেমন আমি ও আমার কাজের জায়গা। 2018 সালে আমি নির্মাণ কাজ করতে গিয়ে দুর্ঘটনার শিকার হই। আমি আর আমার সহকর্মীকে হায়ার করা হয় একটি সীমান্ত ওয়াল ভাঙার জন্য। আমাদের নিরাপত্তা সামগ্রী হুঁশিয়ারি দেওয়া হয়নি। কাজ করার সময় ওয়াল ভেঙে আমার আর আমার সহকর্মীর উপর পড়ে। আমার সহকর্মী মারা যায় আর আমি মারাত্মকভাবে আহত হই। আমার অনেক অপারেশন করতে হয়, এখন আমার অনেক চিকিৎসা নিতে হয়। আমি এই নিউ ইয়র্ক শহরে, আমার কাজের জায়গায়, আমার বাড়িতে আর আমার সমাজ প্রতিনিয়ত পরিবেশ দ্বারা ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত হয়। গত বছর কানাডার বন ফায়ারের কারণে ধোঁয়ায় আমাদের আকাশ কমলা বর্ণ হয়ে যায়। আমি সেফটি জিনিসপত্র ছাড়াই রাস্তা চলাফেরা করি। যখন বড় বড় ঝড় নিউ ইয়র্কে আঘাত আনে, আমার বেসমেন্ট আবার বেসে যায়। আমি আমার শরীরের জন্য কাজ করতে পারি না। আমার পরিবারের কাছে প্রশ্ন করি না তারা কেমন আছে, কারণ আমি তো তাদের সাহায্য করতে পারবো না। সমুদ্রের তলদেশের উপরে উঠার কারণে আমাদের বন্যা অনেক হইতেছে বাংলাদেশে। বিজ্ঞানীরা বলতেছে 2050 সালে বাংলাদেশের 25% জমি পানির নিচে চলে যাবে। আমার পরিবার, আমাদের মানুষরা তখন কোথায় যাবে? আমি আমার কাহিনী আপনাদের সাথে শেয়ার করলাম। এই কাহিনী আমাদের সকলের, যারা পরিবেশের সাথে লড়াই করে টিকে আছে আমাদের দেশে ও অন্য জায়গায়। আমেরিকা আমাদের অধিবাসী সমাজকে বুঝতে হবে। জীবস্র জ্বালানি কোম্পানি, ব্যাংক, কর্পোরেশন যুগ যুগ ধরে আমাদের পরিবেশ, আমাদের জমি, আমাদের পানি, মানুষের জীবন নষ্ট করে আমাদের জীবনের উপর মুনাফা কমিয়ে যাচ্ছে। 2016 সালে সিটি ফার্ম $332 বিলিয়ন জীবস্র জ্বালানি থেকে মুনাফা করে আসছে। সিটি অর্থনৈতিক কোম্পানি, সবচেয়ে বড় পরিবেশ ক্ষতিকারক কোম্পানি। এই সব কিছু হলে পরিবেশের ক্ষতির কারণ। আমরা গরিব শ্রমজীবী অধিবাসী যারা পরিবার ও এর কারণে অধিবাসী হয়েছি, আমরা সিটির আহ্বান জানাচ্ছি যে পরিবেশ ক্ষতির বিনিয়োগ বদ্ধ করতে, পরিবেশের বৈষম্য বদ্ধ করতে হবে। আমাদের ভবিষ্যৎ প্রজন্মকে রক্ষা করতে জীবস্র জ্বালানি বদ্ধ করতে হবে। আমাদের টাকা দরকার, দীর্ঘস্থায়ী পরিবেশ রক্ষা পরিকল্পনা করতে হবে। পরিশেষে আমি একটা কথা বলতে চাই, ইনকলাব জিন্দাবাদ।
Ashraful Hassan is speak Bengali language. I'm the organizer of drum. I will translate for him so you can understand what he speak. Assalamu alaikum. Peace. I'm Ashraful Hassan. I'm pleased to be here with you all. We who want to stop environmental racism and have a different future for many generations. I was born in rural village of Noakhali, Bangladesh about 38 years ago. I have 4 brothers and 3 sisters. My family live in near coastal Bay of Bengal. We are able to survive by farming rice and vegetable. Every 2 years, there was a cyclone that hit my village. Each time we get hit, our home was destroyed. Our crops were destroyed. In 1991, when there was a big cyclone, a lot of people died in our neighborhood. There was also a lot of property damage, including our home and our farm. In 1998, there was a major flood. It destroyed so much, everything was underwater. In 2004, there was another major flood. Climate disaster happened more and more often. There are so many losses. Our life, our neighborhood, land, and life. It was hard to survive. Finally, 2008, I heard about people migrating to America. I decided to take a risk to be able to help my family. And it took, I took out loan and made a dangerous journey. I traveled through over 16 countries and border. I put my life in hands of stranger. Most of the trip was land, some across the water. I walked a lot, crossed many borders. It was not sure I was going to make it. I finally arrived in US to do whatever work was available. I worked as a construction worker to be able to send money to back home to support my family. In 2012, where Hurricane Sandy hit my basement were under flooded. Climate disaster continued here in New York City. In environment for working class immigrant like me in our workplace is terrible. In 2018, there was a big construction site accident. My coworker and I were held back down the wall. We had no protective equipment. We were not given any safety informations. A hug wall fell, killing my coworker, and I am seriously injured. I have many surgeries in my body and continue to have health issues. Here in New York City, in the workplace, our homes, and our community is climate emergency works and destroy us. Last year, when the Canadian wildfire turned into sky orange, I was working without protection and safety equipment. It made me other people sick. Whenever there is a major storm, my basement gets flooded and everything gets destroyed. I have not been able to work regularly because of my health. I am afraid to ask my family how they are doing with rising sea level and flood because I am not longer able to support them. By 200 2050, scientists say that at least 25 of Bangladesh. Yes. I'm just rushing because I'm thinking it's time out of time. So, okay. In 2050, scientists says that at least 25% of Bangladesh will be under the water. What will be happen to my family and my people? I am sharing my story with you today because it is story of my people struggling to survive in the front line of the climate crisis in our homeland and in the margins in immigrant here in US. The fossil fuel industry, banks, corporations have for decades destroyed our land, water, bodies, and life in the order of make profit, in distraction of causing in climate emergency. We climate, um, we climate displaced migrant and poor working class people are calling on city to stop funding environmental racism. From the Bay of Bengal to Hudson River, we need climate justice. We need to end fossil fuel for our future. We need fund for immediate long-term solution and just transition. When I say Inqilab, you say Zindabad, that means long life our struggle. So Inqilab, Inqilab, Inqilab.
Okay, we're running short on time, but we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. And I'm going to ask one question. If you can prepare any questions you want to ask. Again, we have limited time, so prepare any questions you want to ask. One question for Russell. I'd like you to clarify for the audience what commitments Citi has made regarding racial equity. How do they relate to these issues? And what should Citi be doing to improve their commitment?
Sure. So in 2020, Citibank had committed to doing more in terms of transparency around racial equity in response as what many organizations and companies did around the racial uprising of 2019 and 2020, so-called racial uprising. After that, they created a racial equity audit report, which was kind of the bare minimum, as many organizations have done. Part of that work led to decisions around what they could be doing better in terms of transparency, financing, investing in Black and Brown communities. And to give them some credit, they have done in terms of granting some dollars into minority development institutions, financial institutions as well. But they have done little in terms of the follow-up to that report. And so we've actually held them accountable and spoken to them and their directors directly on that and the need to do more in terms of not just doing a little bit about, releasing fees for women and BIPOC-led organizations, but the need to do more in terms of direct impact investment into those organizations and places. Also, we held them accountable in the last talks where we've talked directly to people like their chief sustainability officer, to folks like their general counsel, about the fact that as long as they continue to do financing around fossil fuels, which are predominantly placed in communities of color and BIPOC communities, that they can't say that they're doing more to divest from fossil fuels or invest in our communities. Because by investing in our communities on one hand with pennies, but then by impacting and extracting from our communities with dollars, you're still leading us deeply in debt and deeply underwater in terms of our ability to be able to move by ourselves. So a solution that we are doing at the Hip Hop Caucus is called the Bank Black and Green campaign, where we're focused on getting Black banks and Black community financial institutions funding, direct funding, both government funding and private capital investment, so that they can lead the change in terms of sustainability in our own communities. Things like the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund and funding of that to the Justice Climate Fund are a start for that. But we need more to be done in terms of our financial institutions to make sure that we can be the change for ourselves instead of having to rely upon other banks and financial institutions to come save us.
That's great. Thank you. And I will also note that Citi has no policy to address petrochemicals. So there's a lot of loopholes in their policy commitments themselves. Any questions from the audience? I want to just ask you to stand up and ask away. Anybody? You must have questions. Who's the brave soul? Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Every year we see that there are so many things that are going on, but only every year, like Earth Day, Water Days, Environment Day, this and that. I think, and the persons running the projects, mostly we don't know who is running the project. Like some persons have the social media campaign, but unfortunately we cannot we cannot reach there. But I have a question. Can any one make a campaign about especially environment? Because we see that with the passage of time, we need a qualitative and quantitative oxygen, because there are a number of trees are cutting on daily basis. So this is the major reason of our breathing problems. So any organization that can support and finance the other organization in this way, that they can campaign and protect the cutting of the trees on daily basis.
Anybody want to take that question? Maybe Marcelo, do you want to take the first step?
So, if no one else wants to, so to your point about urban greening, which is essentially one of the issues you said about cutting down trees. Yes, like there are campaigns out there focused on that. One of the campaigns that we're working on with other partners is around making sure that these projects, which lead to like whether it's planting more or not, like cutting down more trees, providing green financing for local communities. For example, we're working with a group called Destination Crenshaw, which is in rebuilding Sankofa Park in Crenshaw in Los Angeles, to show that this place, which had been a concrete corridor and an urban heat island, can actually be attractive for people as an international destination in Los Angeles, the place of stars. But that requires, one, financing from both philanthropy and from banks. And second, it requires focusing on science, because planting trees is not enough. And too often, these sorts of projects just become opportunities for gentrification, where urban greening leads to the push out of communities of color, because then it becomes too expensive for us to live in our own neighborhoods once it becomes greener. So we are working to make sure that's not a situation. I know that other folks, such as our partnership with America the Beautiful All It's In Coalition, are doing that across the country, and they work with several Latino and Indigenous partners too on that. So hopefully there'll be resources for you so you can get more involved, because you're right, these are things that shouldn't just happen on like special days like Earth Day or Climate Emergency Day. They need to be happening 24/7. And there are partners who are definitely doing this work 24/7. There just needs to be more knowledge about the work that they're doing that we can uplift.
Maybe not. Were you gonna?
Yeah, and I can thank you for that. And I can say one more thing to briefly to that, and how banks like Citibank are very interested in clear cutting forests so that they can then claim these carbon offsets in the carbon markets that currently exist, and essentially use the loophole of replanting trees and claiming that they are then offsetting the costs of carbon that cutting the trees invokes to justify their behavior and justify these ecocidal tendencies. And so we strongly discourage that, and of course don't support those false solutions of clear cutting or old forest cutting, or any trees being removed that are not sick or damaging other ecology in the region. And in those instances, of course, we support traditional techniques of removing those trees and being able to use indigenous knowledge, traditional indigenous knowledge, to remedy the situation instead of the corporate financial sector's desires to completely destroy all of nature. Thank you.
And I just want to add and also close I think we all know, and as one of the panelists also mentioned, Indigenous peoples are the stewards of most of the biodiversity that remains on this planet. We need to make sure that Citi is respecting Indigenous rights and making sure that Indigenous peoples have the right to steward their own lands. Climate change is a big driver of biodiversity loss. We need to tackle climate change, and that means ending fossil fuels. And as folks have said, also the deforestation is being driven by other commodities, right? There's been recent reports about how much Citi is financing cattle, or palm oil, or timber. I mean, all of these commodities, Citi has its hands around. And so, we need to be addressing this in a holistic way, but it includes making sure that they respect the rights of BIPOC communities. So I want to really thank this panel. Sorry we ran out of time, but thank you very much for engaging in this session. I'm going to hand it back to Roishetta.
I just want to go back briefly to that question. And as I've stated before, each of us have a role. If you feel like there is something missing in this movement, I encourage you to start that thing. It doesn't, you don't have to, ask the other organizations or groups to do that thing that you feel like should be doing. Start it. Go out there and do those things, so that we can all collectively feel like we're doing our part in this movement. So that was a very good suggestion. There are many coalitions, many organizations. Each of them have different things, specialties that they're working on. So if you feel like there is more that can be done, because there is a lot more, there's considerably more that could be done, I implore you to go out and do those things. So with that being said, climate change is the most controversial topic of our time. But it doesn't matter who you are, how you look, where you live, you are impacted by it. So it is indeed a real thing. It is not made up. This is not a conspiracy. We see and we hear about the detriments of these climate induced disasters that communities are facing daily: hurricanes, wildfires, mudslides, tornadoes. I come to you today after 6 tornadoes hit my area last week. Before that, we had a CO2 pipeline to leak. That CO2 pipeline that leaked in Sulphur, Louisiana, is owned by the same company that owned the pipeline that leaked in Satartia, Mississippi several years ago. Who owns those pipelines? Exxon. Who finances Exxon? Citibank. So we're not just talking about LNG facilities that Citibank finances. Citibank is financing environmental racism. Citibank is financing climate-induced disasters that are happening in our communities. Thereby, Citibank is financing death to our communities. So if you haven't learned anything today, I hope at minimum you know that Citibank is behind all of the things that many of us are fighting. So what we want you to do right now is make a commitment to us to join us in the streets this week, shutting down Citibank. We have some QR codes that are going to be passed around. You see the people waving them. They're going to bring those QR codes around to you. Everybody has some type of smartphone device. Scan those QR codes, sign up to join us in the streets, because we have to show up the same way we showed up to this room, the same way we show up for communities. In Louisiana, when we have a hurricane, people come from all over bringing us water and non-perishable food and flashlights and all of those things. But imagine if all of us show up to stop these projects from coming, stop these banks from financing them, and those hurricanes decrease. And so you don't have to be coming to our communities because they're being torn apart by these disasters. So I just please come out and join us. Some of us may be risking arrest. You don't have to risk arrest. You don't have to speak out. This is a peaceful protest. Everything that we do, it is peaceful. It is in the name of good. And we just ask that you come out there and join us for that. Again, if you haven't got your little card to scan the QR code, they're in the back there. The other thing we want to do before we wrap up is to again state our demands for Citibank. But before we state, we're going to state our demands for Citibank, and we're going to end with a chant. Okay, so Citibank, you're not in the building, but we're pretty sure you have your minions listening to us on this live. So what our demands are is that Citibank immediately stops financing new and expanding coal, oil, and gas projects and any companies expanding fossil fuels. Rapidly phase out all fossil fuel financing and demonstrate on year reductions in fossil financing in line with minimizing climate harms and limiting global warming to well below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Ensure that clients fully respect all rights of indigenous peoples, including the indigenous people's right to free, prior, and informed consent, aka FPIC, as articulated in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. End financing for any projects or companies that demonstrate a pattern of violating human rights and self-determination, especially for indigenous, Black, and other people of color. Adopt or strengthen sectoral and regional exclusion policies, including for coal, LNG, Arctic, Gulf South, and offshore ultra deep drilling. Scale up investments in renewables and proven, not false solutions like CCS and direct air capture hubs, but proven climate energy solutions in line with a just transition and the needs outlined by the International Energy Agency beyond the inadequate goals currently set by the bank. In addition to these demands for Citibank, we are calling for a fast, equitable, fully funded feminist phase out of all fossil fuels, and we are calling for a climate emergency declaration. Again, thank you all for being here. We're going to end with a chant from Drum. They're going to facilitate this chant for us, and that's how we're going to close.
So me and Marshall will say, because this is a lot of conversation about divest invest. So me and Marshall will say no war, no warming. You say only people economy. And we prefer people stand up if you can, because chant always related with that body energy. So no war, no warming. Okay? You can join. Only people economy. Economy. Because it's related fun. No war, no warming. No war, no warming. So let you know the rhythm. No war, no warming. Only people economy.
No war, no warming.
And just one more before we go, and all of you know this. What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? If we don't get it, if we don't get it, if we don't get it,
Oh,